The fluorescent lights hummed their monotonous song in the Naval Base Coronado Armory, casting harsh shadows across rows of weapons that represented millions of dollars in lethal precision. Sergeant Maya Reeves preferred it this way, alone, after hours, when the only sound was the methodical click of metal against metal. She sat on a worn stool, the Barrett M82A1 disassembled before her like a mechanical autopsy. The .50 caliber anti-material rifle was a beast, 30 pounds of steel and polymer capable of punching through engine blocks at a mile. Most armorers handled it with cautious respect, following the manual step by step. Maya handled it like she was reuniting with an old friend she'd sworn never to see again. Her hands moved without conscious thought, removing the bolt assembly, inspecting the firing pin, checking the barrel for copper fouling. Each component told a story. This particular rifle had seen action. She could tell by the wear patterns, the microscopic scratches that cleaning couldn't erase. Someone had fired this weapon in anger, under stress, when lives hung in the balance. She knew that feeling intimately. "Working late again, Sergeant." Maya's hands froze for a microsecond, an involuntary response she hated, before continuing their work. She didn't look up as Commander Jack Harding stepped into the armory, his footsteps measured and deliberate. Navy SEAL team commanders didn't wander into armories at 2100 hours without reason. "Weapons don't clean themselves, sir," she replied evenly, her voice carrying the practiced neutrality of someone who'd learned to keep people at arm's length. Harding moved closer, his experienced eyes taking in the scene. The Barrett was completely field-stripped, each piece arranged with geometric precision on the cleaning mat. But it was the way she handled the components that caught his attention. There was an intimacy there, a familiarity that went beyond standard military training. "That's a specialized weapon," he observed, leaning against the workbench. "Most armorers need the manual for a Barrett." "I'm thorough." Maya dipped a bore brush in solvent, her movements fluid and efficient. "You're something." Harding crossed his arms. "I've had armorers for 15 years. None of them handle weapons like you do." Finally, Maya looked up. At 29, she had the kind of face that could disappear in a crowd. Medium height, lean build, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. But her eyes gave her away. They were old eyes, haunted eyes, eyes that had seen things that left permanent marks. "I do my job, Commander. Was there something you needed?" "Direct, I appreciate that." Harding smiled slightly. "Actually, yes. I need 3 M110s zeroed for a training exercise next week. Wind's supposed to be tricky. Thought you might have recommendations on the setup." Maya's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The M110 semi-automatic sniper system. Effective range, 800 meters. She could zero those rifles in her sleep. Could probably do it blindfolded. "I'll have them ready by Thursday," she said, returning her attention to the Barrett. "You shoot?" The question came casually, but Harding was watching her carefully. "Used to," 2 words, a wall slamming down. "Recreationally or?" "Does it matter?" Maya's tone wasn't hostile, just final. "I'm an armorer now, sir. I maintain weapons, I don't fire them." Harding studied her for a long moment. There was a story here buried deep. He'd been leading men in combat for 2 decades, and he'd learned to read the signs. The way she avoided eye contact when discussing shooting. The unconscious way her fingers traced the Barrett's barrel, like muscle memory she couldn't suppress. The careful control in her voice that suggested enormous effort to maintain composure. Most telling was what she didn't ask. A normal armorer would be curious why a SEAL commander was personally discussing weapon zeroing. Maya asked nothing, because she didn't want him asking questions in return. "How long have you been stationed here?" Harding asked, changing tactics. 3 years, 2 months. "Before that?" "Does my service record matter for cleaning rifles, Commander?" Now there was an edge to her voice, not insubordinate but close. Harding raised his hands in mock surrender. "Fair enough, Sergeant, I'll leave you to it." He turned to go, then paused at the doorway. "That Barrett, you handle it like someone who's fired one before. A lot." Maya's hand stilled completely. For 3 heartbeats she didn't move. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "That was a different life, sir. A different person." Was she any good, that different person? The question hung in the air like cordite smoke. Maya slowly set down the cleaning brush and finally met his eyes directly. What Harding saw there made him unconsciously straighten. It wasn't anger or fear. It was something far more unsettling, a vast, dark emptiness, like looking into a well with no bottom. "She was the best," Maya said quietly. "That's why she doesn't exist anymore." Commander Harding held her gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once and left. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, fading into silence. Alone again, Maya released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up the Barrett's bolt assembly. She'd been so careful for 3 years. Head down, blend in, just another cog in the military machine. No attention, no questions, no missions, no shots. She resumed cleaning, but her mind was elsewhere. Back in the mountains of Afghanistan, wind screaming across rocky peaks, a target 3,247 meters away, and the absolute certainty that came with perfect conditions, perfect mathematics, perfect execution. The shot that made her a legend. The shot that destroyed her. Outside the armory, Commander Jack Harding pulled out his phone and typed a message to his intelligence officer. "Need full service record. Sergeant Maya Reeves, Armory Division, priority." Something told him the quiet woman cleaning weapons in his basement was about to become very important. He just didn't know how right he was. Commander Jack Harding's office was dark except for the blue glow of his computer screen. It was 300 hours and he should have been asleep. Instead, he sat frozen, reading the same paragraph for the 5th time, his coffee growing cold beside him. The file had arrived encrypted with a classified secret designation that required 3 separate authentication protocols. His intelligence officer, Lieutenant Marcos, had attached a brief note. "Sir, you need to see this. I triple-checked. It's real." Service record, Reves Maya Elizabeth. Rank, Sergeant formerly Staff Sergeant. MOS, 11B Infantry, Specialized Sniper Reconnaissance. Unit History, 75th Ranger Regiment, 2nd Battalion, Charlie Company. That explained the skill. The 75th Ranger Regiment didn't produce average soldiers, but it was the next section that made Harding's pulse quicken. Combat DPLOMNTS. Afghanistan, 3 Tour 2017-2020. Confirmed kills, 47. Longest confirmed kill, 3,247 meters. Harding leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. 3,247 meters, over 2 miles. That wasn't just exceptional, it was nearly impossible. The current record was held by a Canadian sniper at 3,540 meters, a shot that had made international news. Maya's kill was in the same stratosphere. He clicked deeper into the file, and a mission report appeared. Operation Guardian Angel. Date August 17, 2019. Location Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Objective: eliminate HVT Rashid Ahmadi, Taliban Regional Commander. Harding began reading, and the clinical military language couldn't hide the extraordinary nature of what had happened. At 5:47 hours, Sergeant Reeves and her spotter, Corporal Diego Rodriguez, established overwatch position at grid reference XD 47216843, elevation 2,847 meters. Target compound located at grid reference XD 50126691, elevation 1,923 meters. Calculated distance to target, 3,247 meters. Harding pulled up a ballistics calculator on his second monitor and started inputting numbers. At that range, a .50 caliber bullet would be in flight for nearly 4 seconds. 4 seconds where wind, temperature, humidity, even the rotation of the Earth would affect the trajectory. The margin for error was measured in fractions of degrees. The report continued. Intelligence indicated HVT Ahmadi was coordinating a complex ambush targeting FOB Ricketts, where 47 U.S. personnel were stationed. Air assets unavailable due to weather conditions. Ground assault not feasible given terrain and enemy force strength. Authorization given for long-range elimination. Environmental conditions. Temperature 114 degrees F, humidity 12%, wind 15-18 mph variable crosswind, atmospheric pressure 29.67 in Hg. Sergeant Reeves calculated a firing solution accounting for. The list that followed was staggering. Coriolis effect, Earth's rotation deflection. Spin drift, bullets clockwise spin. Vertical deflection due to gravity. Wind deflection, horizontal and vertical components. Air density variations. Temperature gradients. Barrel harmonics. Ammunition lot variations. At 6:12 hours, HVT emerged from compound. Sergeant Reeves engaged with 1 round M33 ball ammunition. Time of flight 3.8 seconds. Result: confirmed kill, direct hit center mass. Mission success. FOB Ricketts attack never materialized. Estimated lives saved 47. Harding sat back astounded. 1 bullet, 1 impossibly precise calculation, 47 lives saved. But there was more. He scrolled down and found a commendation recommendation. Recommendation for Medal of Honor. Submitted by Captain James Morrison, Company Commander. The language was effusive. Words like extraordinary, unparalleled, and life-saving appeared multiple times. Captain Morrison had written, "Sergeant Reeves demonstrated skill and composure under pressure that I have never witnessed in 15 years of combat operations. Her actions directly prevented a catastrophic loss of American life. She is, without question, the finest sniper I have ever had the privilege to serve with." The recommendation had been downgraded to a Silver Star due to the classified nature of the operation. But even that was remarkable. Harding clicked to the next file, expecting more commendations. Instead, he found a nightmare. Incident report, Operation Copper Mountain. Date, February 3, 2020. Classification, secret EYES only. His stomach tightened as he read. Mission objective: eliminate 3 HVTs meeting at suspected Taliban safe house. Sergeant Reeves, primary sniper, and Corporal Rodriguez, spotter, inserted with security element. Sergeant First Class Marcus Webb, Specialist Jason Chen, and Specialist Tyler Morrison. At 4:45 hours, team established position. At 5:23 hours, Sergeant Reeves engaged first target at 2,100 meters. Confirmed kill. Second target engaged at 5:24 hours. Confirmed kill. As Sergeant Reeves acquired third target, enemy force of approximately 40 Taliban fighters emerged from surrounding buildings, a pre-planned counter-sniper trap. Team position compromised. Harding's jaw clenched. The Taliban had learned. They'd figured out the Americans had a sniper of exceptional ability and had set a trap. Team came under intense fire from multiple positions. Corporal Rodriguez sustained critical gunshot wounds while calling for extraction. Sergeant Reeves maintained position, providing covering fire while security element attempted to evacuate Rodriguez. Despite Sergeant Reeves eliminating 12 enemy combatants during the firefight, Rodriguez succumbed to his wounds before extraction helicopter arrival. During the firefight, Specialist Morrison was killed by RPG strike. Sergeant Webb sustained severe injuries, both legs amputated. Specialist Chen successfully evacuated but later diagnosed with PTSD, requiring medical discharge. The clinical language couldn't mask the horror. Maya's team had been decimated. Her spotter, the man who'd been beside her for that legendary 3,247-meter shot, had died in her arms. The next document was a psychological evaluation, dated 3 weeks after the incident. Sergeant Reeves exhibits symptoms consistent with severe PTSD and survivor's guilt. She maintains the ambush was her fault, despite clear evidence the enemy had been tracking coalition sniper activity across the region. She has requested immediate removal from combat operations. Recommend approval and monitoring. There was a final note from her battalion commander. Sergeant Reeves is the most gifted sniper I've encountered in 22 years of service. Losing her operational capability is a significant blow. However, given her psychological state and her right to request reassignment, I reluctantly approve her transfer to non-combat duties. She has given enough. Harding closed the file and sat in darkness, processing what he'd learned. Maya Reeves wasn't just good. She was historic, a once-in-a-generation talent who'd made an impossible shot that saved dozens of lives. But that same talent had made her a target, and the people she cared about had paid the price. Now she hid in an armory, cleaning weapons she refused to fire, trying to disappear from a world that had taken everything from her. Harding understood trauma. He'd lost operators, had made calls that got people killed, but he'd never walked away. Maya had, not because she'd failed, but because she'd succeeded too well. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out the mission brief he'd received yesterday. High-value target in East Africa. Extreme range required. His best sniper could manage 1,800 meters reliably. This shot would require 3,100 meters. He looked at Maya's file again, at that impossible 3,247-meter kill, and made a decision that would change everything. He would ask her to become the Ghost one more time. The shooting range at Naval Base Coronado stretched across the coastal hills, backstops rising against the morning sky. The crack of rifle fire echoed rhythmically as SEAL team operators practiced their marksmanship. Commander Harding watched his men struggle with the wind conditions, a persistent 12 mph crosswind that was wreaking havoc on their long-range accuracy. Just 2 more clicks right, one shooter called to his spotter. The bullet still impacted 6 inches left of center, at 1,200 meters. Wind's reading wrong, another SEAL muttered, frustration evident in his voice. Harding had been watching for 30 minutes when he noticed Maya Reeves standing at the edge of the range, a clipboard in hand. She was supposed to be inspecting the weapons after the training exercise, but her eyes weren't on the rifles. They were on the wind flags, the heat shimmer rising from the desert floor, the subtle indicators that told the real story of the bullet's path. "Sergeant Reeves," Harding called out, walking over. "Got a minute?" Maya stiffened slightly but maintained her professional demeanor. "Sir." "My boys are having trouble with the wind call. You mentioned you used to shoot. Think you could demonstrate the proper technique?" It was a test, they both knew it. Maya's eyes flicked to the shooters, then to the targets downrange. She could read the conditions instantly. The wind wasn't consistent. It was gusting, shifting between 10 and 15 mph, changing the impact point with each shot. The SEALs were averaging the wind speed, which was why they kept missing. "I'm sure your operators are more than capable, Commander." "Humor me," Harding said, his tone making it clear it wasn't really a request. Maya set down her clipboard, her jaw tight. She approached the firing line where a SEAL was setting up for another shot. The operator looked up, clearly annoyed at the interruption. "Ma'am, I've got this." "Petty officer, let her demonstrate," Harding ordered. The SEAL stepped aside, skepticism written across his face. The other operators paused their shooting, curious about what was happening. The armorer was going to show them how to shoot. This should be entertaining. Maya took position behind the rifle, a Mk-13 Mod 7.300 Winchester Magnum. She didn't adjust anything, just settled in behind the scope with a familiarity that made Harding's pulse quicken. This wasn't someone remembering how to shoot. This was someone coming home. She studied the wind flags for 15 seconds, watching the patterns. The other SEALs watched her, some smirking, waiting for the embarrassment. Maya's breathing slowed. Her finger found the trigger. She didn't take the shot on the next lull in the wind. She waited for something the others couldn't see. A pattern in the chaos. The rifle cracked. At 1,200 meters, the bullet impacted dead center of the target. The smirks disappeared. Again, Harding said quietly. Maya worked the bolt, chambered another round. The wind shifted, gusting harder now. She made a microscopic adjustment to her aim point, so subtle the spotter beside her didn't even notice. Second shot, dead center, touching the first hole. The range went silent except for the wind. One of the SEALs whistled low. Holy shit. Maya stood up abruptly, stepping away from the rifle like it had burned her. Her hands were shaking, not from nerves, but from muscle memory flooding back, from the feel of the trigger break, from the terrible, seductive certainty of a perfect shot. That's the technique, gentlemen, Harding announced to his team. Read the pattern, not just the average, carry on. He gestured for Maya to follow him away from the firing line. They walked in silence until they were out of earshot of the others, standing beside an equipment shed. I know who you are, Harding said quietly. Maya's face went white, her hands clenched into fists. I don't know what you think you know, Commander, but 3,247 meters, Harding interrupted. Helmand Province, August 17, 2019, Rashid Ahmadi, one shot. Maya's breathing became shallow. Around them, the distant crack of rifle fire continued, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. Her carefully constructed walls were crumbling. You had no right to pull my file. I had every right. You're assigned to my base, and I needed to know why the best armorer I've ever had handles weapons like she's afraid of them. That person is dead, Commander. Her voice was ice cold, but underneath it, Harding could hear the tremor. She died in Afghanistan. 47 soldiers aren't dead, because of you, because of that impossible shot. Don't. The word came out sharp, almost desperate. Maya stepped closer, her eyes flashing with something raw: pain, rage, guilt, all mixed together. You read the file. You know what happened after. Rodriguez, Morrison, Chen, Webb, my team, my brothers, dead or destroyed because the enemy adapted, Harding cut in firmly. You read the after-action reports. The Taliban had been tracking coalition sniper activity across 3 provinces. They set a trap. It wasn't your fault. Tell that to Rodriguez's mother, Maya's voice cracked. Tell that to Morrison's wife and his 2 kids. I was there when he died, Commander. I heard Rodriguez choking on his own blood, begging me to save him, and I couldn't. I was too busy shooting, doing what I'm so goddamn good at, while my brothers died around me. Tears streamed down her face now, 3 years of suppressed grief breaking through. I put 12 Taliban in the ground that day. 12 confirmed kills in 20 minutes. You know what that makes me? Not a hero, a weapon, a tool that got my friends killed because the enemy wanted to neutralize the threat. I was the threat, Commander. They died because of my reputation. Harding let her words hang in the air. He'd seen combat trauma before, but this was different. Maya wasn't broken by failure. She was broken by success. Her skill had made her legendary, and legends attracted the wrong kind of attention. So you hide, he said softly. Clean weapons in a basement, make yourself small, invisible. Yes, Maya wiped her eyes roughly. And it works. I sleep sometimes now. The nightmares are less frequent. I'm not that person anymore. Those 2 shots you just made meant nothing. Maya's voice rose. Targets don't shoot back, Commander. Targets don't have families. Targets don't bleed out in your arms asking why you couldn't save them. She turned to walk away, but Harding caught her arm gently. Maya, I understand. No, you don't, she pulled away. You lead missions, you make calls, but you're not the bullet commander. You're not the thing that ends lives with mathematical precision. You don't lie awake calculating the exact angle and windage that killed someone. You don't remember every single shot, every face, every. Her voice broke completely. Harding watched her struggle for composure. This broken legend who'd saved dozens of lives and couldn't forgive herself for the ones she'd lost. I'm sorry, he said finally. I shouldn't have pushed. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She walked back toward the armory, leaving Harding standing alone. Behind him, his SEALs were still shooting, still missing. They just witnessed something extraordinary and didn't even know it. The quiet armorer had outshot every operator on the range with 2 casual shots that looked effortless. Harding pulled out his phone and looked at the mission file again. Somalia, 3,100 meters, a terrorist planning to kill American soldiers. He'd planted a seed today, whether Maya realized it or not. She'd touched a rifle again, felt that old power. The question was whether the legend could rise one more time. Or if the ghost would stay buried. Maya Reeves hadn't slept well in 3 years, but tonight was worse than usual. She lay in her small base housing quarters, staring at the ceiling, replaying the afternoon at the range over and over. The feel of the rifle, the wind reading, the trigger break, that moment of absolute clarity before the shot. She'd almost forgotten what it felt like. That's what terrified her. At 200 hours, she gave up on sleep and went to make coffee. That's when she saw it. A manila folder slipped under her door, the kind used for classified materials. Her name was written across the front in Harding's distinctive handwriting. Maya stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. She should throw it away. Barrett refused to look. Instead, she opened it. The first page was a satellite image of a compound in Somalia, date stamped from 3 days ago. Circles and annotations marked key structures, distance scales along the edges, topographical data showing elevation changes. Her hands began to shake as professional instinct kicked in, analyzing the terrain before she'd consciously decided to engage. The second page made her stomach drop. Classified secret. Target Ahmed Khalif. Status: former Al-Shabaab regional commander, current independent operator. Threat level critical. She read the intelligence summary with growing dread. Khalif had been coordinating with splinter terrorist cells across East Africa. Intelligence indicated he was planning simultaneous attacks on U.S. convoy routes in 3 separate locations. The convoys were supply runs to forward operating bases, necessary, routine, vulnerable. Estimated American personnel at risk, 60-80 soldiers. Projected casualties if attacks succeeded, 70–90% fatality rate based on similar past ambushes. Maya's coffee grew cold as she read page after page. Convoy routes, attack timelines, intelligence intercepts showing Khalif personally directing the operations. He wasn't just planning, he was counting down. The attacks were scheduled for 6 days from now. Standard response options were listed. Option 1, airstrike. Status: rejected compound located 200 meters from civilian village. Schools nearby. Unacceptable collateral damage risk. Option 2, ground assault. Status: rejected terrain unfavorable. Enemy force strength estimated at 40+ fighters. Coalition casualties projected at 40–60%. Option 3, precision long-range elimination. Status: possible, viable shooting position, identified at 3,100 meters from target compound. Maya's breath caught, 3,100 meters. She flipped to the tactical assessment. A mountain ridge overlooking the compound, clear line of sight, stable shooting platform. The only problem was the distance, well beyond what any current SEAL sniper could reliably manage. The file included wind data, temperature projections, atmospheric conditions. Someone, Harding, obviously, had already done preliminary ballistic calculations. The shot was possible, difficult but possible, for someone with the right skill set. A handwritten note was clipped to the back page. Maya, I know what I'm asking, I know what it costs. But 60-80 American soldiers are going to be on those roads in 6 days. Kids, most of them, 19, 20 years old. They joined to serve their country, and they're going to die in a coordinated ambush unless someone stops it. Air support can't help. Ground forces can't reach him in time. This is the only play. I need the best. Those soldiers need the best. One mission, one shot, then you're done forever, I give you my word. The choice is yours. It always has been. Harding. Maya set the file down with trembling hands. She walked to her small window, looking out at the base in darkness. Somewhere out there, soldiers were sleeping, training, preparing for deployments, young men and women who'd never know how close they came to death. If she did nothing. She thought about Rodriguez. His last words weren't about the pain or fear, they were simpler than that. Did we get him? He'd asked, blood bubbling from his lips. Did the mission work? Yes, she told him, lying there in the dirt. We got him. You did good, brother. Rodriguez had smiled, then died. The mission had mattered to him. Saving lives had mattered. Even dying had been acceptable if it meant something. But what about her? What did Maya Reeves believe? She'd spent 3 years telling herself she was done with killing, done with being a weapon. She'd convinced herself that walking away was the moral choice, the healthy choice. Let someone else carry that burden. Except there was no one else, not for this shot. Maya closed her eyes and saw faces. Not Rodriguez or Morrison or the others she'd lost. She saw the faces she'd never meet. 60 American soldiers on a convoy route, most younger than her, probably scared, probably homesick, probably just trying to get through their deployment and go home. They had families too, people who loved them, people who would get a folded flag and a letter expressing the nation's gratitude if Caliph's attack succeeded. Unless. She looked at the clock, 2:47 hours. Harding would be awake. Commanders like him never slept much. She could go to his office right now and tell him to find another way. Tell him she'd paid her dues, lost enough, sacrificed enough. She could walk away clean. But she'd spend the rest of her life wondering about those 60 soldiers, whether they'd made it home, whether their families were whole, whether she could have made a difference and chose not to. That was the terrible calculus of her gift. She could make impossible shots, could reach out across miles and change outcomes. With that ability came a responsibility she'd been trying to abandon. Rodriguez had understood. You're the best I've ever seen, he'd told her once. That's not ego, it's just true. And when you're the best at something this important, you don't get to quit because it's hard. Too many people need you. What if I fail? She'd asked. Then you fail, but at least you tried. That's all any of us can do. Maya picked up the file again, looking at the satellite images with professional eyes now. 3,100 meters, mountainous terrain, variable winds. She'd need custom ammunition, specific equipment, 3 days minimum for preparation. And she'd need to become someone she'd sworn she'd never be again. The ghost, the legend, the woman who made impossible shots. But this time would be different. This time, she knew the cost, knew what she was risking, and she was choosing it anyway, not because Harding ordered it, not because she was trying to prove anything, but because 60 American soldiers deserved someone fighting for them. Even if that someone was broken. At 6:15 hours, Maya stood outside Commander Harding's office. She'd showered, changed into a fresh uniform and pulled her hair back tight. Her face was composed, professional. The file was tucked under her arm. She knocked twice. "Come in," Harding's voice called. She entered to find him behind his desk, already working, a coffee mug steaming beside him. He looked up and their eyes met. He didn't ask if she'd read the file. He could see the answer in her eyes. "One mission," Maya said, her voice steady. "One shot, then I'm done. Forever." Harding stood slowly. "Agreed. I'll need 3 days minimum to prepare. Custom ammunition, specific gear, and I choose my support team." "Whatever you need." Maya set the file on his desk. "Those soldiers on the convoy routes, do they know someone's trying to kill them?" "No, operational security." "Good," she nodded. "They shouldn't have to know, they should just get to go home." Harding extended his hand. "Thank you, Maya." She shook it, her grip firm. "Don't thank me yet, Commander. Thank me when those kids make it home alive." She turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing in the hallway. The ghost was awake. The transformation began within hours. Maya requisitioned a private room in the base's operations center, covering every wall with satellite imagery, topographical maps, and meteorological data. She hadn't slept since accepting the mission. Didn't need to. Her mind was operating on a frequency she'd forgotten existed, processing variables and calculating probabilities with machine-like precision. The old Maya was waking up, and she was terrifying. Commander Harding had assigned her 2 support personnel. The first walked into her makeshift operations room at 800 hours, Petty Officer First Class Marcus Chen, one of SEAL Team's most experienced spotters. He was 32, compact and efficient, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the controlled chaos. Maya had transformed the room into a 3-dimensional model of the mission. Satellite images were annotated with wind patterns. Weather forecasts from 3 different sources were cross-referenced. Ballistic tables covered an entire wall. "Jesus," Chen breathed, "how long have you been at this?" Maya didn't look up from the computer where she was running trajectory simulations. 7 hours. You're Chen." "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am. I'm a sergeant, same as you were before you went SEAL." She finally looked at him. "I read your file. 4 deployments, 127 confirmed spots, 0 missed calls. You're good." Chen blinked. "Thank you, But this isn't like anything you've done before." Maya turned the computer screen toward him. 3,100 meters. At that range, we're not just fighting wind and gravity. We're fighting the rotation of the Earth. She pulled up a diagram showing the Coriolis effect, how the Earth's rotation deflects bullets over extreme distances. At 3,100 meters, the Coriolis drift is approximately 8 inches at our latitude. But that's just the baseline. We also have to account for the Barrett effect, the interaction between the bullet's velocity and the Earth's rotation. Firing east versus west changes impact point by another 3-4 inches. Chen stepped closer, his skepticism transforming into respect. "I've never calculated that deep." "Most people don't need to. Most shots don't require it." Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. "We're not taking most shots." The door opened again, and a woman entered, tall, athletic, with close-cropped blonde hair and alert eyes. Senior Chief Sarah Kozlov, SEAL Team Security Specialist. "Reporting as ordered," Kozlov said crisply. Maya assessed her in 2 seconds. "Kozlov, Force Recon before SEALs, expert in small unit tactics and hostile environment navigation. You'll be responsible for getting us in and out alive." Kozlov's eyebrows rose. "You did your homework." "I don't work with people I don't know." Maya gestured to the maps. "Insertion point here, shooting position here, extraction here. 18-kilometer hike through mountainous terrain, most of it in darkness. Hostile territory with unknown enemy patrol patterns. Can you handle it?" "Can you make a 3-kilometer shot?" Kozlov countered. For the first time in hours, Maya smiled, a cold, predatory expression. Yes. Over the next 12 hours, Maya pushed both operators to their limits. She drilled Chen on wind reading, teaching him to see patterns invisible to most spotters. She showed him how heat shimmer at extreme distances created optical distortions that could throw off range estimates by 50 meters or more. At 3,100 meters, the bullet drop is approximately 368 feet, Maya explained, manipulating a 3D ballistic model. That's a 12-story building. The bullet will be in flight for 3.8 seconds. In that time, wind can push it sideways by 15 feet or more. Chen shook his head in disbelief. How do you compensate for all that? Mathematics and experience. Maya pulled up historical weather data for the target area. The shot window is between 600 and 800 hours. Before that, temperature inversions create unpredictable air currents. After that, heat shimmer makes target acquisition nearly impossible. She'd already requested custom ammunition, M33 ball rounds from a specific lot she'd test-fired herself. Every box of ammunition had slight variations in powder charge, bullet weight, and jacket thickness. At 3,100 meters, those tiny differences meant the difference between a hit and a miss. I need to fire at least 50 rounds to understand the ammunition's characteristics, Maya told Harding when he checked in. Every lot is different. Whatever you need, the range is yours at 2,000 hours. That night, Maya and Chen went to the extreme long-range facility. Maya set up at 1,800 meters, the maximum the range allowed, and began methodically firing and recording data. Chen spotted through high-powered optics, calling each impact. 0.3 mils right, 0.2 mils low. Maya adjusted, fired again. Dead center. They worked for 4 hours, Maya building a mental database of how these specific rounds performed. She rejected an entire case when she noticed a 2% velocity variation. At 3,100 meters, that inconsistency would create a 14-inch dispersion. Most snipers would never notice that difference, Chen observed. Most snipers don't make 3-kilometer shots. Maya inspected another round under magnification. At this range, everything matters. A bullet that's 0.2 grains heavier will impact 4 inches lower. A jacket that's 0.001 inches thicker changes the ballistic coefficient enough to matter. Chen was beginning to understand he wasn't working with just a skilled shooter. He was working with someone who'd elevated sniping to a science. On the second day, Maya focused on equipment. She selected a custom-built rifle, a Barrett that had been accurized by the base gunsmith. But she spent 6 hours personally adjusting it, tweaking the barrel harmonics, ensuring the scope was mounted with perfect alignment. The scope has to be aligned within 0.1 milliradian, she explained to Kozlov, who'd stopped by to watch. At 3,100 meters, even a tiny cant, a tilt in the scope creates significant errors. Kozlov studied Maya with frank curiosity. Chen says you're unlike anyone he's worked with. I'm sure he said it less politely. Actually, his exact words were, she's not human, she's a ballistic computer with a heartbeat. Kozlov paused. He meant it as a compliment. Maya's expression darkened slightly. Being compared to a machine isn't the compliment people think it is. But you are exceptional, you know that. Exceptional at killing. Maya set down the rifle. That's not something to be proud of, Chief. Even when it saves lives. Maya didn't answer, returning to her work. On the third day, she ran through complete mission simulations. She'd obtained weather forecasts for the target area, calculated probable wind conditions, and developed 3 different firing solutions based on various scenarios. Chen watched her work with something approaching awe. You've planned for everything. No, Maya's voice was quiet. I've planned for everything I can predict. Combat always brings surprises. That's when training and instinct take over. That evening, the night before insertion, Maya sat alone in the operations room, staring at the satellite image of the target compound. Somewhere in that building was Ahmed Khalif, planning attacks that would kill dozens of American soldiers. And tomorrow, she would reach across 3,100 meters and end his life. Her hands were steady as she loaded the custom magazines. 60 hours of preparation had transformed her from the broken ghost hiding in an armory to something else entirely, a focused, precise instrument of calculated violence. But underneath the professional calm, Maya felt the familiar darkness rising. This was what she was good at. This was what she'd always been good at, and that terrified her more than the mission itself. Rodriguez's voice echoed in her memory. "You're the best at something important. You don't get to quit." "I'm not quitting," Maya whispered to the empty room. "I'm just finishing what I started." She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, preparing her mind for what came next. The ghost was ready. The helicopter's rotors cut through the pre-dawn darkness as it skimmed low over the Somali landscape. Maya sat in silence, checking her equipment for the third time. The custom Barrett M82A1 was secured beside her, wrapped in protective fabric. Every round in her magazines had been hand-selected, weighed, and verified. Chen sat across from her, face painted, ready. Kozlov was up front with the pilot, monitoring communications. At 3:42 hours, the helicopter descended into a rocky valley 18 kilometers from the target. They had 6 hours to reach the shooting position before the window closed. 30 seconds, the crew chief called. Maya's heart rate was exactly 62 beats per minute. Controlled, professional, the way it always was before a mission. They fast-stroped down into darkness and the helicopter disappeared immediately, leaving only the whisper of wind across stone. Kozlov took point, navigating by night vision. Maya moved second, carrying the rifle and 45 pounds of additional gear. Chen brought up the rear, covering their back trail. They moved in complete silence through hostile territory. The hike was brutal. Steep mountain trails, loose rock, elevation changes that burned their lungs, but Maya's focus never wavered. She'd studied this route for 3 days, memorized every contour. Her body moved on autopilot while her mind reviewed ballistic calculations. Wind speed, temperature, humidity, Coriolis effect, spin, drift. At 8:47 hours, they reached the shooting position, a rocky outcrop at 8,400 feet elevation with clear line of sight to the compound below. Kozlov immediately established security, scanning for threats. Chen began setting up spotting equipment. Maya assembled the rifle with movements so practiced they were meditative. Stock, upper receiver, barrel, scope, each component locked into place with satisfying precision. The compound sat in a valley 3,100 meters away, looking like a child's toy village through the scope. Small figures moved between buildings, none of them Khalif yet. Chen set up the spotting scope and weather station. Wind 3 o'clock, 9 miles per hour, temperature 84 degrees, humidity 41%, barometric pressure 29.82. Maya plugged the data into her mental calculations, cross-referencing with the ballistic tables she'd memorized. At this range, a 9 mph crosswind would push the bullet approximately 47 inches right, but wind was never constant. "We wait," she said quietly. The sun climbed higher. The temperature rose 84, 87, 91 degrees. Heat shimmer began dancing off the rocks, making the distant compound ripple like a mirage. Maya didn't move, didn't fidget. She'd learned long ago that patience was a sniper's most important skill. Rodriguez used to joke that she could outweight a statue. Chen provided updates every 15 minutes. Wind shifting, now 4 o'clock, 11 miles per hour. Maya adjusted her calculations mentally. Hours passed. The sun became punishing. Sweat ran down Maya's face, but she didn't wipe it away. Movement was the enemy. Motion attracted attention. At 14:23 hours, Chen stiffened. Activity at the main building, multiple personnel emerging. Maya's pulse didn't increase. Couldn't. She controlled her body with the same precision she controlled her rifle. Through the scope, she watched men exit the compound's largest structure. 5 figures. 4 were clearly guards, armed, alert, scanning surroundings. The 5th walked differently, confident, protected. Possible target, Chen murmured, cross-referencing with photos. Wait, confirming facial features. It's him, Ahmed Khalif, center of the group. Maya's breathing slowed, 4 breaths per minute now. Oxygen saturation perfect, heart rate dropping to 58. Khalif moved toward a vehicle. The window was closing. Range 3,127 meters, Chen called. Wind 5 o'clock, 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15. Temperature 97. Call it when ready. Maya made microscopic adjustments to her aim point. The rifle was already dialed for 3,100 meters, but she needed to account for the additional 27 meters, the wind gust, the heat shimmer creating optical distortion. In her mind, the bullet's path appeared like a visible arc. She saw the trajectory, saw where wind would push it, saw gravity's relentless pull over 3.8 seconds of flight time. The mathematics became instinct. The calculations became feeling. Khalif stopped beside the vehicle, speaking to his guards, presenting a stationary target. Maya's finger rested on the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure. That's all that separated decision from execution. She thought about the 60 American soldiers on convoy routes, thought about 19-year-old kids who joined to serve their country, thought about families who'd never get notification letters if this shot connected. Then she stopped thinking entirely. The world compressed to a single point of focus, the crosshairs on Khalif's chest, the wind reading, the trigger. Everything else, fear, doubt, guilt, trauma, fell away. This was what she was, what she'd always been. The rifle thundered, the massive .50 caliber round leaving the barrel at 2,799 feet per second. For 3.8 seconds, the bullet flew. Maya didn't watch through the scope. She was already working the bolt, chambering a follow-up round, muscle memory taking over. She'd know if the shot connected before Chen called it. The bullet traveled 2 miles through turbulent air. Wind pushed it right, then left. Gravity pulled it down in a parabolic arc. The Earth's rotation added subtle drift. All the calculations, all the preparation, all the variables reduced to a single moment of physics and fate. In the valley below, Ahmed Khalif's chest exploded. He dropped instantly, dead before his body hit the ground. Confirmed kill, Chen's voice carried controlled excitement. Perfect hit, center mass, target down, target is down. The compound erupted into chaos. Guards scattered, searching for the source. But at 3,127 meters, they'd never find it. The sound of the shot would take nearly 3 seconds to reach them, and by then, the direction would be impossible to determine. Kozlov was already packing equipment. We move now. But Maya sat frozen for a moment, staring at the distant compound. She just killed a man from nearly 2 miles away, ended a life with mathematical precision. And it had felt easy. That's what terrified her, not the difficulty of the shot, but how natural it felt, how right, like coming home after a long absence. Reeves, we need to move, Kozlov urged. Maya broke from her trance, quickly disassembling the rifle. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere, processing what she'd just done, what it meant, what it made her. 60 American soldiers would live. That mattered. That had to matter. But she'd also proven that the ghost wasn't dead. The legend was real, and Maya Reeves was still the most dangerous sniper alive. They moved out rapidly, descending the mountain as enemy forces below searched desperately for an attacker who was already kilometers away. The mission was complete. But for Maya, something else had just begun. The extraction helicopter lifted off at 21:34 hours, 18 hours after they'd been inserted. Maya sat in the vibrating cabin, still covered in dust and sweat, the rifle case between her knees. The mission had been textbook perfect. No contact with enemy forces, clean exfiltration, target eliminated. Chen sat across from her, grinning despite his exhaustion. That was the most incredible shot I've ever witnessed. 3.1 kilometers in variable wind. First round. You're a legend. Maya didn't respond. She stared at her hands, which had been rock steady on the trigger but were trembling now. Kozlov noticed. You okay, Sergeant? Fine, the lie tasted bitter. They landed at the forward operating base in Djibouti at 22:47 hours for debriefing before the flight back to Coronado. Maya went through the motions, recounting wind conditions, ballistic calculations, timing. Her voice was professional, detached, like she was describing someone else's mission. The intelligence officer reviewing the operation kept shaking his head in disbelief. Satellite confirmation shows Khalif was killed instantly. No collateral damage. The compound evacuated within minutes. By the time local forces arrived, everyone was gone. And the convoy operations? Maya asked, her voice quiet. All 3 convoys reached their destinations without incident. Intercepts suggest Khalif's network is in disarray without his coordination. You saved a lot of lives, Sergeant. The words should have brought satisfaction. Instead, Maya felt hollow. They flew back to Coronado the next morning. Maya slept on the plane, or pretended to, while Chen and Kozlov discussed the mission with barely contained enthusiasm. She could hear them calling it historic, unprecedented, the shot of the decade. All she could think about was how easy it had been, how natural, how the rifle had felt like an extension of her body, the calculations flowing without conscious thought, the trigger break as familiar as breathing. She'd spent 3 years trying to kill that part of herself. One mission, and it had come roaring back. When they landed at Coronado at 16:30 hours, Commander Harding was waiting on the tarmac. He shook hands with Chen and Kozlov, thanking them for their professionalism. Then he turned to Maya. Walk with me, Sergeant. They walked in silence across the base, past buildings and training facilities, until they reached a quiet spot overlooking the ocean. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. The convoy soldiers made it home, Harding said finally. All of them, 63 men and women who will never know how close they came. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Chen says it was the most impressive display of marksmanship he's ever seen. Says you made it look effortless. It was effortless, Maya's voice cracked. That's the problem, Commander. Harding turned to face her. Explain. I spent 3 years in that armory convincing myself I wasn't that person anymore. That the sniper who made impossible shots was gone, dead and buried with Rodriguez and Morrison and the others. Tears welled in her eyes. But she's not dead. She was just sleeping. And now she's awake. Now I know the truth. Maya wiped her eyes roughly. I'm not broken. I'm not healing. I'm just a weapon pretending to be human. And when I touched that rifle, when I made that shot, it felt like coming home. Do you understand how terrifying that is? Harding was quiet for a long moment, watching the waves crash below. You know what I see when I look at you, he said finally. Not a weapon, a woman who carries impossible weight, who takes responsibility for things beyond her control, who feels every life she takes and every life she saves. That doesn't make it better. No, but it makes you human. Harding's voice was firm. Weapons don't feel guilt, Maya. They don't hide in armories trying to escape their past. They don't shake after missions. You're not a tool. You're a person with a gift that comes with a terrible price. Maya shook her head. A gift that got my team killed. A gift that saved 63 lives 2 days ago. That saved 47 in Helmand Province. That's made a difference in ways you'll never fully know. Harding paused. The question isn't whether you're a weapon, it's what you do with your abilities. I don't want to be a sniper anymore. I can't go back to combat operations. I can't. I'm not asking you to. Harding cut her off gently. What if there was another way? Maya looked at him warily. What do you mean? The military is developing the next generation of snipers right now. Young shooters with potential but no guidance. They're learning from manuals and instructors who have never made shots like yours. They'll deploy with good training but not great training. Harding met her eyes. How many of them will die because they weren't prepared for the impossible shot when it mattered? Maya's breath caught. She understood where he was going. You could teach them, Harding continued. Not as an active operator, as a civilian contractor. Train the next generation. Share everything you know, the calculations, the wind reading, the mental preparation. Make them better than you were at their age. I'm not a teacher. You're the best. That's all that matters. Harding's voice softened. Rodriguez died doing what he believed in. So did Morrison. You honor them by ensuring the next generation is ready, by making sure their sacrifice meant something. Maya stared at the ocean, processing, teaching, passing on knowledge, making other snipers better prepared, more capable, more likely to survive. It wasn't redemption. She didn't deserve that, but maybe it was purpose. I'd be a civilian, she asked quietly. Completely, no rank, no deployments. You show up, teach advanced marksmanship, and go home. No missions, no triggers. Harding paused. Unless you want them. I don't. Fair enough, think about it. No pressure. You've earned the right to choose your own path. They stood in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. Maya thought about young snipers facing impossible situations. Thought about Rodriguez teaching her to read wind patterns, Morrison showing her ballistic shortcuts, all the knowledge passed down through generations of shooters. Knowledge that died when they did. Unless someone carried it forward. How long do I have to decide? Maya asked. Take all the time you need. You just completed an impossible mission. Rest, heal. When you're ready, we'll talk. Harding walked away, leaving Maya alone with the sunset and her thoughts. She'd made the shot, saved the lives, proven the ghost was real. Now she had to decide if that ghost could become something other than a killer. Maybe a teacher, maybe a guardian, maybe someone who used her terrible gift to protect others instead of destroying herself. For the first time in 3 years, Maya allowed herself to imagine a future that wasn't just survival. It was a strange feeling. Almost like hope. 6 months later, Camp Pendleton, California. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rifle range as 23 Marine Scout sniper candidates assembled, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. They'd been training for 6 months, and today marked their final evaluation in advanced long-range marksmanship. Maya Reeves stood before them in civilian clothes, tactical pants, a simple black shirt, her hair pulled back in a functional ponytail. No rank insignia, no uniform, just a woman with knowledge to share. Wind reading at extreme distances, she began, her voice carrying across the range with quiet authority, is less about calculation and more about pattern recognition. You're not measuring wind speed, you're reading the story the environment is telling you. She gestured to the wind flags downrange, positioned at 400, 800, and 1,200 meters. What do you see? A young corporal raised his hand. Flags showing 8 to 10 miles per hour, ma'am. Don't call me ma'am, I work for a living. Maya smiled slightly and several candidates chuckled. And you're half right. The flags show average wind, but watch the mirage. She pointed to the heat shimmer rising from the desert floor. See how it's moving faster near the 800-meter line? That's a wind current the flags aren't catching. If you trust the flags alone, you'll miss left by 6 inches. At this range, that's the difference between a hit and explaining to your team why you failed. The candidates leaned forward, paying attention. Maya had earned their respect the hard way, by demonstrating skills they couldn't imagine achieving. On her first day, she'd made 5 consecutive hits at 1,400 meters in variable wind conditions. No warm-up shots, no misses. The class had stopped whispering about whether she deserved to be there. "Corporal Davis," Maya called to a young woman in the front row, "you're up, show me what you've learned." Davis approached the firing line, settling behind an M110 sniper rifle. Maya stood beside her, observing. "Target at 1,200 meters. Read the conditions." Davis studied the flags, the mirage, the terrain. Wind left to right, approximately 9 miles per hour. Temperature 83 degrees. I'm adjusting 3 clicks right for wind. "Why 3?" Maya asked. "Because the wind is—" Davis paused, looking at the mirage again. "Wait, the mirage shows it's stronger mid-range. I should adjust 4 clicks." "Better, but you're still thinking in averages. Look at the pattern. The wind gusts every 12 seconds. Strong, then weak, then strong. When are you taking the shot?" Davis watched for 30 seconds, her eyes tracking the rhythm Maya described. "On the weak cycle, less compensation needed." "Exactly. Wind isn't constant, it breathes. Learn its rhythm." Maya stepped back. "Send it." Davis waited, watching the flags. When the wind lulled, she fired. The target showed a hit, 2 inches right of center. "Good," Maya said. "Not perfect, but good. You read the pattern. That's what saves lives downrange." The day progressed with Maya rotating through candidates, offering corrections, sharing techniques she'd learned through years of experience. She taught them about ballistic coefficients, temperature gradients, even the psychological preparation needed for high-stress shots. She didn't tell them about 3,247 meters, didn't mention Afghanistan or Somalia or the impossible shots that had made her a legend. That wasn't what they needed. They needed practical knowledge, real-world applications, ways to survive when everything went wrong. During a break, a lance corporal approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, I mean Miss Reeves, can I ask you something?" Maya nodded, sipping water. "Some of the instructors say you were a sniper before this, that you made some really long shots." The young Marine looked curious but uncertain. "Is it true?" Maya was quiet for a moment, watching the other candidates practice. She thought about Rodriguez Morrison, all the ghosts she carried, thought about the person she'd been and the person she was becoming. "I was a sniper," she said finally. "I made shots that mattered, lost people who mattered more, and I learned that being good at killing isn't something to brag about. It's a responsibility that never stops weighing on you." The lance corporal nodded slowly. "Do you regret it?" "Every day." Maya's voice was soft. "But I also know that some shots have to be taken. Some people need to be stopped. And if you're the one capable of making that shot, you don't get to walk away just because it's hard." She looked at the young Marine directly. "You'll face impossible situations, shots you don't think you can make, decisions that'll haunt you regardless of the outcome. My job is to prepare you for those moments, to give you the skills and knowledge so when that time comes, you're ready." "How do you live with it, the weight?" Maya smiled sadly. "You don't live with it, you carry it, every single day. But you also remember why you took those shots, to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. That doesn't erase the weight, but it gives it meaning." The lance corporal thanked her and returned to practice, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts. 6 months ago, she'd been hiding in an armory, trying to forget who she was. Now she stood in sunlight, teaching the next generation, using her painful past to build something better. It wasn't redemption. The people she'd lost were still gone. The lives she'd taken still haunted her dreams. The weight Rodriguez had mentioned never disappeared. But it had purpose now. After class, as candidates cleaned weapons and departed, Maya remained on the range. She assembled one of the rifles, a familiar Barrett, and settled into position. Not to take a shot, just to hold it, to feel the weight, to remember. The rifle wasn't her enemy anymore. It wasn't her curse or her identity. It was just a tool. And she was just a woman who'd learned to use it better than most, who'd paid terrible prices for that skill, and who'd chosen to ensure others didn't pay the same. Her phone buzzed. A text from Commander Harding. "How's the class?" Maya smiled and typed back, "They're good kids. They'll be better. Because of you." She pocketed the phone and stood, the rifle in her hands. The sun was setting, painting the California sky in brilliant colors. Somewhere, young soldiers were training for deployments. Some would face impossible situations. Some would need to make difficult shots. And because of what Maya taught them today, more of them would come home. That had to be enough. She wasn't the ghost anymore, wasn't the legend hiding from her past. She was Maya Reeves, a teacher, a survivor, a woman who'd found a way to transform her darkest experiences into light for others. The rifle wasn't her burden anymore. It was her bridge between who she'd been and who she was becoming. And for the first time in years, that felt like enough. The end.